Hi everyone, welcome to another Sunday Smiles. My name is Ibtihal Badawi and I'm an expressionistic artist and cultural explorer. I use my art to build bridges between different people and different culture to bring us together. And that's why I create Sunday Smiles. And today we have a special guest, Jasmine. Hi, you're muted.
Oh, hi. I thought my mouse was working, but I have it unplugged, so that's yeah. But hi everyone. My name is Jasmine Green. I'm a visual artist. I work with One Hood Media, which is an organization located here in Pittsburgh. I'm also a workshop assistant for the Center for Creativity at Pitt. I love working in a lot of like bold and vibrant colors. The focuses of my paintings are usually Black women, and also do like poems, written content, things like that. And so I'm really excited to be here today because Evital's like one of the sweetest people I know.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank
so like
you. Thank you.
I'm so happy to actually like talk to you again in the midst of like everything that's going on.
Me too. I'm so happy for you to be with us, and I love your work. It's truly empower in every piece. Like it's so bold, and uh, it just speaks to you. Whenever I see your painting, it just truly speaks to me. So tell us more about your work and how did you find yourself through art?
Oh yeah. Also, I want to say, Melissa, I am really excited to have this conversation with you because we've never met, and so just like the little bit of talking we did beforehand, it seems like you're a really cool person. So
Thank you.
also
You
excited
too.
for that too. But so I started painting between like my junior and senior year of high school, so it's been almost a decade. Actually, this year would be a decade. Oh, nice. So, um, yeah, I actually was like really terrified of painting with acrylic the first time I came across it. The way it was described was kind of more like, and it's accurate. It was described like a plastic, and it's like everything you put down was just going to be there. Like you can't like take back anything that you paint. And so it seemed like this really scary process of like, oh, if I mess up, that mistake is always going to be there. And so oh, sorry about that. My mom was calling. She's gonna be very upset at me, but it's fine. um, but after I like played around with it a bit, I realized that there was so much that I could do with acrylic paint. That kind of the beauty that comes with it is that you can layer things, and so like one layer of paint doesn't have to be the end all be all. Like if you don't like something, you can go like add it again, like on once everything is dried. um and you can really, it's like a really versatile medium. And so through that I kind of learned a lot about myself, and um like sometimes I tend to rush through things, and so like even though acrylic kind of gives you that leeway of like, hey, if you want to like rush through this you can, but if you take your time you're going to have a better end result. And so it's kind of helped me to slow down a little bit and make sure that I'm being more intentional with each layer that I put down. um and so, yeah, I've been painting with it for almost a decade now. I'm self-taught, so I feel like I've learned a lot with just how to use the medium, like how to even things like drawing better, painting better, things like that. I'm actually, this year is going to be probably the first year that I'm going to try to take. Oh, pardon me. This year is probably the first year that I'm going to be looking forward to like getting like professional instruction and mentorship, because I feel like I've had a really fun journey with trying to learn how to do things myself, but I feel like there's also room for reaching out and seeing what other people know and kind of taking from that knowledge and also sharing what I know, and kind of having more of like a conversational process with art. And so I'm really excited for all of that.
That's amazing. You self-taught. Your art is amazing. Like
Thank you.
that's really great. I think it take really persistent and patient for you to learn by yourself, and figure it out. That's truly amazing.
Thank you.
So how you see your art speak to you? Like, what's your process when you do your artwork? How do you like each piece is different.
Mhm.
So what's your process? How you find your subject?
um So art for me is I don't want to call it a messy process, but it's very spontaneous. So the way that I paint is very similar to the way that I write, where I will like see something, I will see something happening, or like, you know, some sort of phrase will come to my mind, and it's like from there it's almost kind of like so Kirsten Irvin, who's also another artist within Pittsburgh, which actually is the way that we met through GPAC. Um, she has this term called idearia, where it's like you have an idea for things and it just like all comes out, and there's just like you can't control it. And I've been obsessed with that. Like we had like this conversation last year where she told me about this phrase, and I've been obsessed with it ever since. And it kind of feels a lot like that, where it's like this idea will just pop out and I just will have like a bunch of ideas about it. And so on my phone, I have like the notes app on here that is my lifesaver. Like I will just record every single thought I have about a possible like artwork, a poem, anything. I will just log everything I can think of there. And then from there I will like, because usually I'm working on something else at the time, so I can't like immediately work on it. um, I'll usually give it some time to kind of just marinate there. I'll like add some other ideas to it if I have like, you know, additional thoughts about it. And then when I finally get to the painting process, I have this folder on Instagram specifically that I call muses, which are just like if I see like somebody posing in a specific way that seems really interesting, I'll just save it over there. And so I'll usually just scroll through and like kind of think if there's anyone who kind of fits the idea that I have in my mind. And if I like locate someone through there, I'll usually just use that, and I'll try to do like the sketching out process to see if that makes sense. I'll also go on like Pinterest or Google just as like if I need like a very specific pose. Um, and then from there, I kind of just like go into the process of creating. Like it's kind of just like sometimes it's very thoughtful, sometimes it isn't. It's kind of just like I'm just going with the moment. Um, but I try my best. Like I know I'll never get like that initial idea that I had, but like it's kind of also like a very dynamic process where I'm kind of pulling as much from that memory as possible, but also bringing new ideas into it when I'm actually creating the piece. So it's a little messy, but it's what's been working. So I
It's
can
a
only go.
beautiful process. Like, you know, it just and sometimes it just come to you, and sometimes it take time, and so that's your muse, right?
Yeah.
So you got so everything around you inspire you, right?
Uh, in a way, yeah.
Mm.
I feel like because I've had a bunch of negative experiences whenever I was like
Mm.
a like an young adult,
Mm.
um like teenage to young adult. And so I feel like since then I've tried to kind of be in the moment more than I have in the past. And so I feel like that has raised my perception of just like being able to observe things and try to take more inspiration from like some of these more mundane things. I had a painting from 2 years ago that's called Starlings Darling, where it's this woman looking over a balcony, and she has like these starling birds that are like one's on her shoulder, one's on her hand. And the idea for that was to kind of make this like kind of very glamorous looking sort of painting, and it has like all of these really like pretty pinks and purples. And the idea I got from that was through these like starling birds that you can see. Like if you went to like Oakland, you would see like these little flocks of birds that are like the goofiest birds I've ever seen. They're really pretty. They have like all of these like gold flecks on their wings, and like if the sun hits it just right, they like kind of shine almost. But they're like these little goofy birds that'll like kind of wiggle back and forth and like hop around. And like my idea from that was like you never really see these birds seen in like a really glamorous way. They're kind of just like they're kind of seen alongside of like pigeons, like kind of like these very like normal, mundane
Mhm.
birds. And so I felt like it would be a really cool idea to try to make them seem glamorous because they're like literally covered in like these gold flecks, and it's like it would be cool to see them in that way. So
I
yeah,
want to see
hi.
that painting.
Yeah, I'll show you. Which also, I have to say, I keep staring at the paintings behind you because I know those are your works, and
Yes,
I'm in love with them so much. Like, I'm looking
thank
especially at
you.
the one where the horse is like charging in, and
Yeah.
just like all of like the bursts of color, and it just seems like it's like really just coming at you. So,
Thank
I've
you.
wanted for like so long to like talk with you about your work because I love your work so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I sometimes it's I don't know, like sometimes I get idea in my mind, it just come to me. Like and also when I see something that trigger me from the inside, I feel that the way that I speak is through art. So when I see something, eh, either way, it's like sad or happy. I feel that I wanna I wanna express it in the form of art. So and I love it. I find myself in it when I don't know how to explain it, but it just I feel that's where I belong.
I am right there with you. I've never heard anyone else kind of explain their experience with art that sounds so similar to mine. But that's definitely like and I've gotten better at it in these last few years, but I have been a really bad public speaker. I still feel like I'm still getting comfortable with the idea of speaking publicly, but art for me was kind of that like main way that I could speak to other people when it felt like my words were going to fail me. And like it felt like, I could talk about a bunch of things like you were saying, like if something's happy, something's sad, like I'm able to channel that better through art than I feel like I can through my own words. And so I-
Yes, 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 yes. That's so true. Yes, 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 yes. And I think art brings us together. Like
Mhm.
everything around us, it's like art. And also there is this misconception about art. You need to be a professional artist to produce art, but no, that's not true. Anyone can express themselves through art, like anyone can express themselves through words. So it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so happy having this conversation with you. This is
Me too. Me too.
like that's kind of like the model. That's kind of the motto of the Center for Creativity is that like everyone is creative in a way. Like I'll commonly hear people saying like, "Oh, well, I'm not creative. Like, I'm not really like an artist or, whatever." And our whole thing is like, well, maybe you just haven't found that way that you're creative yet, or maybe you're even discounting that you're doing this thing that is definitely creative, but you don't see it as being like a creative process.
That's true.
So, yeah. And so,
And it also it you need to give yourself a chance to try. If you don't try, how you will not know. And even if you try, it takes time. It's like when we learn a new language, it takes time for us to learn. So it's also with creativity. It takes time for it to blossom. Melissa, you look like you have a question.
I always have questions. And it's not just a question. It's never just a question. Because I'm very curious. I'm also an artistic and creative dabbler. And my process, I would actually say I don't have a process, but hearing you describe your process, I'm like, okay, maybe I do have a process. It sounds kind of like that. Very, very little planning involved. But I'm curious because one of the things you noted right at the beginning was your works always tend to have a person in them. I think you specifically said a Black woman, but I'm very curious because human figures are probably like the one thing that never appears in my work. And I don't have a reason why. I'm curious if you have a reason why that always appears in your work.
hmm. I think for me, so I know a big reason of why I create is like representational. Um, because I feel like and it kind of was like the thing that triggered me to start like painting specifically about Black women is that it felt like there were these very one-dimensional ways of talking about like Blackness and womanness. um the high school that I came from, it kind of warped my perception of what it meant to be Black, where it was like, oh, you're only Black if you have like these specific tastes, like if you like this kind of music, this kind of like, entertainment, whatever, that's what it meant to be Black. And like from that I felt really disconnected from my own Blackness. And it took going to like university and meeting other Black people that like the same things that I did, where it was like, oh, like as long as you're like, you're Black, like everything that you do is Black. And like kind of trying to show other people it's like we are multi-dimensional beings, like we have like all of these complexities to us, and like we're just as complex as anyone else, and like trying to find a way of like explaining that through my artwork. But I think also kind of going back to like the conversation Ebital and I were having about like just being the way that we speak, for some reason like the way that I kind of think about the way I'm able to communicate to other people has like a person in it. And so I've never really analyzed, like, is there a way to speak to people without using like the human form? So I feel like that's a really interesting thing to think about. And like hearing you say that, like, that almost none of your art has people in it, but you're still able to communicate, like, that's something that like is almost kind of like mind blowing to me. Like, whoa, how are you able, like, I know like landscape paintings obviously are a thing, but it's like, whoa, how are you able to like make that connection without like having the human form in it? And so like now my mind is just like going a mile a minute of like,
and that's funny because I'm
how could
listening
you
to
do
you
that?
and I'm like, I need to start putting people in my pictures. How can I do this? Yeah, and I'm curious too, because painting is something that's new to me, and so I've played around a little bit now with acrylics, done some watercoloring. I was more originally a lot of pen and ink, plain old pencil, not even charcoal, just plain old pencils. And then I moved up into oil pastels, and just recently have gotten into more painting oriented things. What was it that made you feel the click with acrylics? What, because I know art is very physical. There's a feel, you're doing something that you feel emotionally, but there's also kind of a physical aspect to it. I'm just curious how you locked in on that as what really drives you.
so I remember I kind of like, there's a lot of memories like from that time of my life that are like very blurry, but there's something that's very clear about my sort of like meshing with acrylic paint. I remember the day that like we were given the syllabus about like what our semester would look like in our art class. And I remember the teacher bringing up acrylic paint and like going over like the properties of each medium that we were going to be going over. And I just remember seeing that like it's like plastic and like you can't change it. And I just remember feeling this immediate panic and like spending the entire semester like going through all of these other like mediums that I didn't really have fears about, like about charcoal, even though I wasn't really great at charcoal. um about like just like drawing with like graphite, and like I think we touched on watercolor and one more medium. I can't remember what the other medium was. um and then we jumped into acrylics, and acrylic was going to be the kind of like end of the year project that we were going to do. And I remember kind of like spending the whole semester dreading getting to acrylics. And actually I think I have my first like small painting up here. um but I remember like taking some acrylic supplies home because like the first day that I kind of sat down and actually like played with it, like it was still kind of weird, but like there was something about it that kind of like captured my attention. And one of our end of the year product or projects was like painting an individual painting, but also working on like the wall. There was like the wall outside of like the art department where like we can each kind of like paint a mural. And the focus of my painting was going to be Bob Marley. I don't remember why I said on that, but I was like, it's like something that's colorful, so I'll be able to like paint with all of the colors that we have. And I just remember it being like this slow process where like I would go through all of my classes in the day and I would just think about the mural. And it's like, I have like, our class into like 10 minutes early. I'm going to go paint the mural. Like during lunchtime, like I'm going to go paint the mural. And it was just this like really slow process where I didn't realize I was obsessed with it until like the end of like the mural was finished, and I was like, I've spent so much time painting this. And it's like, it's been everything that like I've been thinking about was like painting this mural. And after the semester ended, and it kind of like went into my senior year also, that like I think between then I painted my first painting, which I'll tilt the camera up, but it's that one up there. That was a painting I did of Haley Williams from Paramore, who I was obsessed with at the time. That was like my favorite band. Um, and I remember after like the year ended and like as I was graduating, that I asked if I could like take some art supplies with me like as I went back home, because I wasn't gonna come back obviously the next year for school. And the art teacher was nice enough to give me like a good amount of acrylic paints and like some brushes and canvases. And like from then on, it was just like that was it. Like I I don't know what it was about acrylic paint that I latched onto, but I just knew that like it kind of sparked, like I always like drew and everything, and like using like graphite and pen, like that was kind of like you, that was kind of like my start with painting, like making art. But there was something about like the dimensionality to it, I don't know if that's a word, but like everything just kind of seemed to come to life more with acrylic. And I think that's what I kind of like, once I saw that I could do that with acrylic, it kind of was just like it was a done deal.
Nice. I love that. Thank you.
I hope that wasn't too wordy.
No, it's one of the things that fascinates me. It sounds like you kind of fascinates you too, is hearing about somebody else's creative process, because you never know when something in their process will spark something in your process, and it
Right.
creates that wave. Because I agree with you completely in your comments where you said that, you know, people who say they're not creative, I should say. And it's a funny thing, because it's almost like we've been taught to fear creativity, because if you are considered a creative, then there are certain artistic expectations placed upon you.
Right.
And it's total BS. You know?
That's kind of why I don't want to sound like such like a crotchety person, but like it's kind of the thing that like makes me slightly irritated about social media. Like I love social media. I love that you're able to connect with people that you haven't even met. And like one of my favorite things is if I ever come across a creative person, just like, or someone who like professes that they're a creative person, I should say. And like going through their like social media profile and just seeing like, whoa, this is your art style, like this is your approach to like doing things. Like I'm just like, I get obsessed with people like their creative styles so easily, because like it, you know, your own like creativity, you can kind of like, it kind of can feel boring sometimes. It's like I see this all the time, like I kind of want to see what other people are doing. But the kind of flip side to that is like you were saying, it's this expectation that you have to create in a specific way, or if you're not creating in a way that you see someone else creating, that means that your art isn't good enough. And you know, I just don't like that comparison factor to it. Like you can't create things and just have it be for you. um or that like, you know, it's, if it's not measuring up to someone else's standard, that means it's not good enough. And I feel like that's where so many other people, like you were saying, just kind of shy away from like, oh, I'm not a creative, like, you know, I see what people do who are creative, like I can't call myself that. And I just, that's something that makes me a bit sad.
It's like comparing. It's like when people compare to other people, it just it gives that negativity. It doesn't give any like any uplifting. And I read this book, Show Your Art, and it's really show your work, show your work, show your work. I think yes, it's show your work, and it he talk about you need to always show your work, no matter what is it. Show your work. Sometimes we feel like afraid, we don't want to show our work, or this is not our style. Like a lot of artists obsessed with what's your style of work. Like I paint portrait, I paint like a landscape. So, and then when they do something new, to try something new, they don't show it because it's not, for them, it's not good enough. But in this book, it talk about always show your work.
Yeah.
And I think when I see other art, I feel inspired. I like to see other art. It sparks things inside me. Like, when I read a poem, there is like light bulb come in my head. When I see other art, also there's a lot of light bulb. Oh my God, that's so pretty. And I get inspired in a way that I want to create, not the same thing, but it gives me more ideas.
Right. And I think that's the most beautiful part of the creative process. Like, whenever you can, like, and that's kind of what I miss. Like, I wish there was a way to have that more in the pandemic, but I just remember having kind of like these like jam sessions, but like for, visual art with other people, where it's just like we're all just like creating something in a room together and we're just chatting and like kind of comparing, like, hey, like this is what I'm making. Hey, this is what I'm making. Like, oh, that's cool that you did that. Like, how did you do that? And like that's something that I really miss. And like I know like social media can have like ways of doing that where it's like, hey, like you can kind of like chat with each other and like your like messages, like your DMs, and like kind of have those conversations, but it's just not the same. But yeah, I think yeah.
It's not the same. But
I need your contact afterwards. We have a Zoom night
Oh, yes.
that does exactly that once a month with my sisters and I.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Seriously, send me your info, because we're always looking for new people, new voices, new creative things, and it's funny because my sisters used to be of the school of, oh, Melissa's the creative one, and it's totally not true, and they've gotten over it basically. So, but there's a vibe you ride when you're in a room like that, and I do it with writers groups. I haven't had an in-person art group. That would be thrilling. Haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but when everybody's in that mode, there's this energy thing. I don't know the words for it, but it's definitely that vibe.
It's uplifting. It's contagious. It's like this vibe is contagious. Before I went to this sound meditation. So the instructor, she does sound meditation with big balls, and then we start creating art together. Like, she give us a paper and it's oil pastel. So each one of us like do different movement for like a couple of seconds, and then we move the same paper around. And then at the end, you see how we make it all together in one piece. And
I love that so much.
it's really uplifting, amazing, and everyone like felt so good. And it's show you how can we work together in one piece.
But yeah, kind of going back to your the book, which I'm gonna look this up because I definitely want to read this book, the Show Your Workbook.
Yes.
Something that I am in the process of recording, which I actually took a few days off. I'm going to try to go back and do it, but I'm learning how to watercolor. And I've talked with other people that like are either watercolorists or work with acrylic paint, where it's like, it feels like those are kind of like the opposite ends of the spectrum for a lot of people. Maybe oil paint is probably more of an accurate opposite to watercolor, but yeah, I'm making it a point of like recording the entire process of me learning how to do watercolor. And I feel like it's so important because it's like I have like no knowledge. Like prior to it, like I've tried watercolor a few times and I've just felt like this isn't exactly what I'm going for. And so like I'm in this seat again where I'm like a complete novice to learning how to do something, which is like in art, it kind of feels like once you've learned something, like, oh, now you're an expert in doing art. But it's like there's so many different various forms of art that like you can be good in like this one thing, but there's like thousands of other things that you have like no familiarity with. And I feel like it's important to show like I'm always in the process of learning. And it's like even with acrylic paint, I still have like so much further I can go in like learning how to like work with the medium. And so like I feel like it's really important for people to know like you can still be in the phase of learning things and it's still just as valuable as like down the road when you feel like you finally like become proficient in it. And I'm hoping through that it helps people if like they feel really self-conscious about the process, that like, oh, like it's okay to be a beginner again, or it's okay to feel like a beginner, or to feel like you don't have it yet. Like as long as you keep working on it, you'll get there eventually.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's really nice to hear people experience like you're not alone in this. Like I am not the only one who's struggling through to get this right. You know, I like it. Try gouache. Gouache is beautiful too. It's like between acrylic and between water. So it's really nice, and I like. I don't know why. I like how it's it have that vibrant like
Yeah.
color like, and it's really beautiful.
I did
So
try it once and I love it. There's like this softness to it almost, like the finish to it just
mhm.
feels like I I kind of wish I could like describe it in words. It kind of feels weird trying to describe it, but it almost feels like this very like cozy finish where like it kind of feels like everything just kind of like melts together in this like really like comforting way. I don't know
Yes,
if like that makes
yes,
sense.
yes, it makes total sense. I can really relate to it. So guys, I want you, thank you so much, Jasmine, for joining us. And I want you to get a paper and a pencil so we can do a fast art exercise that could help us in the creative process. So I want you to think of this affirmation. I will not allow myself to get tangled up in my thoughts. Think about this affirmation and then create a design in any way you wish using any materials you desire to represent your thoughts when they begin to sprawl, to go around. So I'm going to draw two. So I'm going to ask you some questions to help us through this process. What are your anxiety triggers? What does it feel like when you become tangled in your thoughts? What types of thoughts tend to dominate? How do you detangle yourself? So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jasmine, so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely like really deep into this this thought exercise, this art exercise here. So I'm definitely
Please
gonna
send
keep
me a
working on
picture
it.
whenever you finish so we can share. This is mine. You know, I don't know if you can see it or not. This is like the brain, and this is like thoughts, like going everywhere. And these are my hands. And you know that thing when you crochet? So I'm holding and I'm trying to take I am trying to untangle my thoughts. And I say to myself, breathe, it will pass. You know, breathing really help, you know, try to, you know, when you when you have that crazy thoughts in your head and there's a lot of things going on, so breathing really help to to process things so you can see more clear. But yes.
Have a good one.
Oh, I
I'll share
love
mine
it,
really quick.
Melissa.
Oh, I love that.
It
I
starts
love
out
it.
little and cramped in until eventually
Oh, and
it
it's like the
stretches out and
heartbeat.
blossoms. Yeah.
Wow, it's beautiful.
I love that.
What about yours, Jasmine?
So this is a sketch. I'm definitely going to develop it more, but like I initially started with all of these different spirals. I'm not sure if you can see, but like it kind of will spiral, and then these like sort of holes in the center, kind of like where it kind of goes into like it keeps just spiraling downwards and downwards, and just how these spirals can influence other ones. And I kind of have like an outline of like a person in profile in the back. And so I actually want to make this into a painting now that I think about it more. But it's like how